Coming to you from Strings and Things Studio in Ventura, California, I'm Anne.
I'm Karin.
I'm Kaity.
And this is the Strings Unraveled Book Club.
Yay.
Hey.
So, hello.
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 This month we read Circe by Madeline Miller. What did you guys think?
I loved it.
Me
I
too.
loved every... I was sad that it ended, and I wanted to go back, and I actually did start it again.
I thought
It
about
was so good.
buying the audiobook and starting.
I re-listened
voices
to
in
the
the-
last couple chapters because I was kind of doing something when it finished, and I was like, oh, it's over. And I was like, I got it. And then today when I was driving in, I was like, I'm going to re-listen to it just to make sure I had everything.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say I was skeptical when I started it because I'm famously not a fan of fantasy.
Oh.
And I was like, I don't know if this is going to be too close to that or if I'm going to enjoy it. But I automatically was like, oh, I love this.
Okay,
It was
good.
great.
That's interesting because I thought of it more as some like modernization of Greek mythology. So I wouldn't
Yeah.
necessarily put like mythology into fantasy, but I can see where those.
I could see them being adjacent, you know?
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, but I loved it.
Oh, good.
I thought I knew. I love Greek mythology, and I thought I knew, but this actually introduced characters and elements of Greek mythology that I'd heard of, but I didn't really understand, and so I thought it made connections between the different godlike groups,
Yeah, I
the
mean,
hierarchy of
Yeah.
of the.
it definitely strengthened my understanding of the like who remained after Zeus took control.
Mm-hmm.
It's good. It's
Yeah.
a good book.
Yeah. I like that you got, like, a lot of, like you were saying, I learned a lot, and it wasn't all about, like, the heavy hitters in Greek mythology you already know everything about.
Yeah.
I was like, I hadn't heard of a lot of them,
It was
or
a
didn't
lesser-
know anything about a lot of them. It was fun to read and then Google and look at pictures of, like, what does that monster look like?
Yeah.
I was thinking of the Sting song, "Caught Between the Scylla and Charybdis."
Oh, yeah. What song
I'll
is that?
I'll be. What has it go?
We'll have to look it up.
Wrapped around your fingers, it goes.
You'll come up with
Yeah,
it.
yeah. But I'm not gonna sing it.
You could. I'm
Not
sure you
here.
do fine justice to it. But I won't sing it. My son graduated from 8th grade today.
Woo.
And each kid got to have a statement read as their name was read. I thought it was very nice. And one of the kids rickrolled the audience.
Oh my gosh, that's
And
so funny.
It does what?
A rickroll is playing the Rick
Astley.
Rick Astley, Never Gonna Give You Up.
Oh, how awesome!
But so at the beginning she says, I'm gonna butcher this, and we all, like Kevin and I, thought it was gonna be the kid's name.
Oh.
And instead, dun 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 dun, she sang like the whole verse or
That's
the chorus.
so funny.
I was impressed. My son thanked the lunch ladies.
Oh, it's stuck
Oh,
in my
that's
head.
nice.
It's stuck in my head now.
Like the real ones that got me through all of this, the lunch ladies.
And every teacher except for the one he didn't like.
Oh, okay.
And Christopher Lee.
Okay.
He's a big Dark Side fan.
Yeah.
It worries me. So you probably do better than the teacher announcing the Rick Astley song. All right, so I do have a summary. Published in 2018, Circe retells the story of the eponymous Greek mythological figure. Although traditionally viewed as a heartless, savagely beautiful witch who allures sailors to their death, the Circe of Madeline Miller's imagining is quite different. This Circe is a multidimensional, flawed, and empathetic character struggling to find meaning and worth in her immortal life. Through Miller's detailed and honest first-person narrative, which takes place over thousands of years, the evil witch becomes relatable. The world seems stacked against Circe from the start. No one expected much of the dime a dozen nymph called Hawk for her golden eyes and human voice. She grows up in a cold, disinterested home. The other nymphs, especially her siblings, mock her relentlessly, never allowing her to find any semblance of belonging. When her uncle, the Titan Prometheus, was whipped before the other gods, Circe's gentle heart is saddened where the others are maliciously fascinated. In bringing him succor, she discovers a life-changing fact. She does not have to follow in the footsteps of the other gods. Little does she know that she will go on to set herself apart from them more than anyone before. As the years wear on, Circe meets a young mortal. Desperate for desperate for companionship, she quickly falls in love. His mortality, however, hangs over her head like a guillotine. For all she loves him, he will one day die and leave her alone. Refusing to accept this, Circe searches for pharmaca, an herb endowed with magical properties. So that's kind of a fun thing throughout the book, right? The words that become things we know is similar or related. Using it, she transforms her would-be lover into a god, but this does not herald her happy ending as planned. Instead, he spurns her for a beautiful nymph called Scylla. In her youthful jealousy, Circe decides to get Scylla out of the way. For surely then she will marry her beloved and live happily ever after. After using the pharmaca on Scylla, Circe finds not marriage but guilt. Scylla has been transformed into a 6-headed monster that feasts on mortal flesh. When the guilt-ridden Circe confesses her sins, her power is determined to be pharmakia, witchcraft, which goes beyond even the gods' limits. Fearing they cannot control her, the gods decide to exile Circe on the lonely island for Aea for all eternity. I love a word that has 0 consonants in it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
There, Circe comes into her own, becoming a powerful witch, but life is never simple, not even for a goddess with magic at her fingertips. Over thousands of years, Circe meets many figures of legend: Daedalus, Ariadne, the Minotaur, Medea, Jason, and Odysseus. Odysseus, however, becomes not just a name, but her lover and dear friend. In Miller's reimagining, the tale of the spiteful witch and the brilliant hero is reformed as a complicated and compassionate, yet doomed courtship. Still, even when Odysseus leaves the island to return to his wife and child, he leaves Circe with a child, and the hope of her loneliness is ending. From her love of her child, Circe finds the strength to accomplish feats that stymied all others before her, but she also learns the true depths of fear. Her child is mortal and vulnerable, and even he will leave her alone once again when he makes his inevitable journey to the underworld. Despite this, Circe proves herself a force beyond reckoning, powerful and willful enough to successfully stand toe-to-toe with the greater gods to protect her son. Circe follows the goddess's extraordinary life as she matures and changes through suffering, self-recrimination, life-changing relationships, and the persistent march of time. She grows from a fearful yet compassionate nymph to an all-powerful witch. Perhaps greater than all of this, Circe eventually finds it within herself to not only challenge the gods, but to leave them behind forever, to live the life she always wanted, surrounded by the love she was always denied.
There you go.
That's a pretty concise telling, actually.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
Yeah.
An epic tale.
Yes.
Because this book is reasonable. It's 385 pages.
Mm-hmm.
Very readable. Like,
Yes,
I would
Very.
I have to say, as I age, my reading fluency has dropped off. Because as a kid, I would sit down and just blow through
Devour
a book. Yeah. And that's not so easy these days.
Yeah.
But this was a book that I really like. I'd sit down, 20 pages went by, and I don't even know where the time went.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about this. She does such a good job at balancing the fact that Circe lives thousands of years and so many things happen in the book, but none of it felt too fast and none of it was slow. Like, there was not a slow part in the book to be, like, dragged down by, because there were so many things happening and how quickly it was moving, but you never felt rushed.
Nope.
No, she blended from event to event within her life. I didn't see the passage of time.
Mm-hmm.
It was like I was like living her life with her, and yes, I could see, yes, people are aging, but it's almost like they're it's like two different timelines. We're on her timeline,
Yeah.
and everybody else and hers is the regular timeline, and everyone else is a little faster.
Yeah. Yeah, because like when she leaves Daedalus, or Daedalus and she part,
Mm-hmm.
like it doesn't feel like much time has gone by,
Mhm.
but he has left the earth, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
He's gone.
And then her ability to slow down and tell those finite stories, like
Mhm.
An Evening with the Sailors,
Yes.
or her time with Odysseus, or her time as a mother. Like her
Mhm.
time as a mother is about a third of the book,
Mhm.
Yeah.
but in reality, it's 16 years of
Right.
epic lifetime.
Mhm.
I love her journey, like just every piece of it, like her choice to separate herself from the gods and to gracefully accept her exile, to when she chooses to connect, and what she builds for herself.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like this book really, we got to see her journey of maturity from young person wanting to have the love of a parent to a mature woman in her own power. It's like it took her a long time to grow into that power in our years, but I think even in her lifetime, it took her a while to step into her own comfort of, oh, I don't, like you said, I don't have to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I have autonomy now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you knew from the beginning with how meek she was and how, everybody treated her that was going to be what the point of it was. Like, that she was going to end up finally coming into her power and what she chooses to do with it. And what she does choose to do with it was like so perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you don't get remembered through the ages
Mm-hmm.
if you remain the meek.
Exactly.
I don't even know how. Just the
There's a-
meek.
There's a phrase about that, isn't there? About like what kind of women make history.
Oh,
Well-behaved
Yeah.
women
Well-behaved
seldom
women.
make history.
Yeah.
All right, let's start with the questions.
Okay.
This book has conveniently provided us with questions, so
I
I
love
didn't
that.
have to go hunting very far. I think the strength of her first book probably encouraged the excellent support at the back of the book. Her first book is The Song of Achilles, also wildly popular. Question 1. Circe struggles to find a place for herself as a woman in a man's world. How does her experience resonate with modern day challenges that women face?
She's a good what's the word? Someone you can, fill in the blank on and, relate to her situation regardless of the fact that she was, a god from thousands of years ago, right?
How does a mythological
Right.
hero of
the
several thousand years
yeah.
ago, she's so relatable,
Yes.
though, right?
The metaphor of her life and her coming into her power can be related to, I think, by many women and minorities and disadvantaged people who, learn or decide that they're not going to take it anymore, right? They're going to stand up for themselves, or they're going to carve their own way in the world. They're going to make their way in. That I think you could relate it no matter what your situation is. It relates to modern day women, but I think it would have related to women throughout history.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it does.
I think that her ability to stand apart from her personal history is really important. Like she took a very different path to power than her mother, right?
Right.
Her mom knew, well, I mean, she did one thing in common with her mom. Her mom knew that she had to, she couldn't be as willing as other nymphs. She needed to take control and become the wife of Helios. And yet, like, that's still a very typical way to gain power. So I was very impressed that she took her own path. Even though she came to that knowledge watching someone be tortured. Because she comes to her understanding of she must confess her behavior from Prometheus's example of he could have kept it secret that
Right.
he
Mhm.
gave the fire to mankind, but he went willingly and confessed to Zeus,
Mm-hmm.
which is, I think, a later question, but we'll come back to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think she's very, very relatable to, what women face, and also like going deeper than skin deep,
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
because people are going to perceive you in a certain way, right? Like society's perception is a veil over all our eyes. So here's a woman on her own. She must be defenseless.
Yeah.
Here's a quiet person who doesn't appear to have all the same talents that I have,
Mm-hmm.
like the other gods relating to her. And yet she's so powerful, she can vest the most powerful gods.
Mm-hmm.
She does get taken unawares by the sailors the first time,
Mm-hmm.
but never again.
Yeah.
And so beating the perception and showing yourself to have greater talent.
Yeah.
I
Than
think
what's
that's
expected of you. I also think, like, you like relating her story to, your story or something that you experience as a woman, moving through this world. I think, like, well, yeah, but she was a god, like she was a witch. She had magic powers. She, had all of these advantages that I don't have as a human being. But what does she choose to be at the end of the book? To become immortal
Yeah.
and to give up her deity altogether.
I'm sure that's a question coming.
Yeah.
But go ahead, Karin.
But the thing to remember is she didn't know her powers. She did at the point that there's a point where she finally discovers that she can do something, and that's when her
Yes.
brother says, "It's about effing time.
Yeah, hey, dummy.
How did you not
Mhm.
see this? You're the only one that did." Because when she was with the others, their constant aggressiveness to try to force her into how they were and how they expected her to behave kept her from being herself. I feel like that it was because she was banished that she finally got a breath and she got to the opportunity to try to be herself without constant, conflict. She didn't see it as a gift at first, but
At first.
but after a while, it's like how it is. When you're in school, you want to be liked by the popular people, but you don't really want to be like those popular people. I'm saying in my experience, the popular people are not very nice people.
Yeah.
But
The popular people in my school, some of them were very nice people,
Mhm.
and I was friends with one of them who was a very nice person that I really enjoyed. So it was frustrating to want to be with them and also want to be like them because
Yeah.
because I did like them.
It's because I don't want to say popular people can't be nice,
Yeah.
but in this type of peer pressure sense,
This
where
is a very, like, the gods are personification. Like, they are personifications.
Yes,
In they're distilled personifications of
whatever they represent.
of like one aspect of humanity or nature. And so it's a perfect microcosm of the worst of us.
Yeah.
Because even though they're supposed to be above humanity, really they are just amplifications.
whereas she sort of, because of her mixed background and that got mixed and more mixed, as
What do you mean mixed background?
okay, so she was in the different class structure of the gods.
Okay.
Her people were at the bottom of the bottom.
Yeah.
And so there was a sort of hierarchy in that they knew if these higher levels bred, in a sense, that they knew what they would get. But as you went down, and she and her brother were anomalies.
Yeah.
They didn't know what to do with them. And as someone who's, I totally could relate to that. It's like not being, she's not neurotypical of the gods, right? Whatever. That's what I choose to see.
Well, that's fine. That's your way that you're
That you
relating
connecting.
to her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On the subject of her choices in the last chapter, chapter 27. Here's where the spoilers begin. This is some of the most artful, as like a grammarian, this is some of the most artful writing I have ever encountered. The last chapter is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 paragraphs. She's in this glade. She's made a potion. She's casting a spell.
So beautiful.
Oh. And she goes. I just want to read 2 paragraphs, maybe 3. Perhaps I told myself it would not be like that. Perhaps all I hoped would come to pass, and Telemachus and I would go to Egypt indeed, and all the other places. We would cross and recross the seas, living on my witchcraft and his carpentry, and when we came to town a second time, the people would step out of their houses and greet us. He would patch ships, I would cast charms against biting flies and fevers, and we would take pleasure in the simple mending of the world. The vision blossomed. Vivid as the cool grass beneath me, as the black sky overhead, we would visit the lion gate at Mysia, where Agamemnon's heirs ruled, the walls of Troy, their stones chilled by winds from ice-peaked Ida. We would ride elephants and walk in the desert at night beneath the eyes of gods who had never heard of Titans or Olympians, who took no more notice of us than they did of the sand beetles toiling at our feet. He would say to me that he wanted children, and I would say, you don't know what you are asking of me. And he would say, this time you're not alone. We have a daughter, and then another. Penelope attends the birthing bed. There is pain, but it passes. We live on the island when the children are young and visit often. She weaves and casts spells while nymphs glide around her. However gray she gets, she never seems to tire, but sometimes I see her eyes turn to the horizon where the house of the dead and its souls wait. The daughters I dream of to life are different from Telegonus, different from each other. That's where I'm going to stop. There are 3 shifts in tense, and it's so
smooth,
perfect.
Yeah,
it's such a perfect way to tell of what's going to happen in the future without it ever happening.
You don't need a whole nother book to tell you this life.
This is just her imagination of what she wants, and she knows that with her, magic, she can use the power to make what she wants to happen. So they don't need to tell us anything about what happens in her future, because you already know how perfect it's going to be, because she can.
So perfectly written.
Yeah.
Normally that's like a bad no-no, right? And she takes this huge violation of tense and turns it into perfection. I was floored by that. I'm like, wait a minute. Did that just happen?
Yeah.
Like it all became reality
Did it
right in
actually
front of us. And
was it all a dream?
In 3 paragraphs.
Yeah. I love how I think it's Penelope says that Odysseus said of her, like, he never met a god that enjoyed her divinity less.
Yes.
So I was like, well, isn't that so perfect?
Yes. A central theme at Homer's Odyssey is a longing for Nostos, homecoming. In what way is that theme reflected in Circe's story?
I think it's not necessarily like... I think it's about her discovering what she wants her home to be.
Yeah.
Because she's stuck on this island for what she perceives as eternity until she decides that doesn't have to be that way.
Heck no.
But then at the end, she comes back. And she lives there, and she raises... I mean, we don't know. In her visions, she raises her children there.
The author telling us
and they
that's
revisit
how it goes,
often that place that she was banished to, that a lot of people could... And she did, for one point, in her life, find it lonely and sad, and she didn't want to be there, and she wished that she could get out, but then she carved it into a place that she felt comfortable, and she made it into a home for her and her child, so much so that she wants to come back to it, even though she doesn't have to ever again.
Yeah, I thought when they left, like sailed away, after she declared that her exile was ended, that was going to be it, that they were then going to go on to their adventures. I was surprised that they returned
So soon.
swiftly. I had him wondering because she picks the flowers in Crete and like where is she putting those? But I didn't expect her to go home so quick.
Yeah.
I feel like that nostos, the longing for a place to be home, she didn't have that place before. And yes, she made that a place, but I think she wanted the autonomy to say so. Until she had the freedom to say, I can come and go. Now I choose this to be home. It's not really her home until she gets to have the voice to say, this is my home.
Rather than a place she was placed. When she returns, it is really her home. Even though she's given it away to Penelope at that point. In a sense,
later on, we're going to talk about her. I love that.
What about also like her being at home in her?
Yeah.
You know, like that's...
Yeah. To feel comfortable in herself and in her power and who she is and the things that she can change about herself and the things she knows she can't, you know?
And acknowledging it being that life being a good fit is everywhere too. Like Odysseus is comfortable there.
Yeah.
And he almost would make excuses to stay. But really it's not his home. So
Telegonus.
Yeah, he finds it's never his home.
No.
It's where he's born, but it's never his home. And Telemachus, like, he makes it his home, and you know,
because where he
that
lived,
shifting of who it's right for and who it's
where
not.
he lived was always his father's home. It was never really his place, and so that's why he was super comfortable there. Anyway.
Well, she names, so Telegonus means far from home. Like, she already fated him to not, that his birthplace was not his home.
Yeah.
How does Circe's encounter with Prometheus change her? How does it continue to affect her actions? I think it's the source of her morality.
Yeah.
And empathy. Here's someone who was of high standing, and he was willing to he gave himself up. He didn't fight it. He sacrificed his comfort forever because of his empathy for humans. And his morality, like you said, drove him, I think, to put himself aside, which is something none of the other gods. And I almost think, are you sure Prometheus was not her father or something? I guess because there's that gene that she definitely. He's an uncle, right? I guess they're in a sense that they're all uncles.
Yeah. Well, I suppose Zeus would count more as like some sort of cousin because he's a child of a Titan and she's a child of a Titan.
Because her brother doesn't have that empathy.
Well, none of her.
But she's more like her uncle or whatever he is to her than... Isn't he your uncle?
Yeah. I don't know.
Wait, who? Prometheus is her uncle.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
She is more like her uncle than anybody else. Her brother, I think the two of them are the unicorns of the family.
Yeah,
I think you're giving Aedes a little too much credit. He seems to be pretty awful.
Yeah.
No, I didn't. No, I'm saying her brother is not like her. No, I'm saying she is like her uncle.
Yeah. Oh, Prometheus and Circe are unicorns.
Yes, are unicorns. You know, her brother is just like the others. Yeah.
Well, I on a side note, I got thinking because like Circe is a name used by George R.R. Martin, right? It's a key character. Like, was he referring to this Circe in that choice? You know,
probably
because lions are the sigil of that family. Anyway, that was a complete side note. Throughout the novel, Circe draws distinctions between gods and mortals. How are each of them portrayed? How does Glaucus change when he becomes a god? Which is a word I've never heard in my life before reading this book. So that would be a character that I didn't know about.
Yeah.
But then I found this guy on Instagram who's making states out of their...
Oh, out of the wood?
Yeah. and he was describing this pine in South Dakota that has a bluish green tint as
The
glaucine.
Glock?
Yeah. And in fact, it might be in the name of the pine too. And
Do
I
we
was
get
like,
the word glaucoma from it?
oh, I don't know.
Oh.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I hadn't ever heard of him
No.
before either.
And then, like last week, I heard it used
Of
as a
course.
color descriptor, which is the color that
That
he
he is?
turns.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
So, I was reading this a couple weeks ago, right after I'd been reading it. I drive along the 126 coming home, and there was all kinds of traffic. And what's in front of me? But Athena, construction, and Circe, something else. On
that's
two
weird.
different businesses in the same second traffic. I'm like, that is just really bizarre.
That's weird.
I'm like, and I wanted to take a picture, but I'm driving and I don't have one of those things that I can flip around and take a picture.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, anyway,
That's funny.
I thought
So-
that was interesting.
Yeah.
How are the more?
Glocculus is a color.
Yeah.
It looks like periwinkle-ish.
Yeah.
I guess it's also
Glocculus.
Glocculus. That's my new favorite color.
It's a great blue,
It's just a
actually.
good
I think
name.
It's a great
color.
blue.
I have some.
It's
my
an
new
awkward
swimsuit.
name.
Glocculus.
Yeah.
Sorry, can you restate the
Oh
question?
yes. Throughout the novel, Circe draws distinctions between gods and mortals.
Mm.
How are each of them portrayed? How does Glaucus change when he becomes a god? So I think she portrays mortals as good. You know,
Mhm.
Yeah.
really good.
Good, and also she sees the value in their strength, because she talks about how, as a god, as immortal, whatever, but like all of the things that humans have to go through, all of the pain and suffering, all the scars, all the how short their life is, and yet they still persist and they do the things that they do, and they still make a family and do what they think is right, because that's all that they know how to do. So I think she perceives them as strong, whereas the majority of the gods, besides her and Prometheus apparently, don't give at all about humans except for their praise and adoration that they can
Yeah,
give them.
how
Mhm.
humans can serve them.
Right.
Like the thing I always will remember about Zeus is he's getting down to earth and getting down.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, just a sidebar, I did not really understand much about the Titans and the whole political balance between Titans, who were really
Mhm.
the old guard of the gods, and the Olympians,
Mhm.
Zeus's, and how there's just this tenuous peace being held.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, we're both kind of
For now.
but
Yeah.
it's like that her father was willing to sacrifice her to keep the peace because he didn't really care.
No.
But it's like, you can't keep acting this up. I don't want trouble from Zeus. It's like, wow, really? She doesn't know the power she has. If
Until
she
she
can
does.
upset until she does.
Yeah. Oh,
So-
until she does.
And then she's like, "You want me to go tell Zeus? I'll go tell him right now
Yeah.
if you want me to. I'll start this war. I don't care."
Which I adore that she's just been quietly
I'll
eavesdropping
burn the
and
mother
listening.
down.
Yeah, right?
I know
That-
so much about what you and my uncles talk about. I
Yep.
can go tell Zeus everything if you want me to.
Yep. I got days and times.
Plenty of time.
So I think that she portrays the mortals as aspirational almost.
Yeah.
And gods as selfish, petty,
Mm.
nothing good. Like, I was reading. I lost my momentum with the Odyssey, but every appearance of Athena in there, I'm like about halfway. It's good,
Yeah.
It's
Oh,
a
yeah.
blessing.
It's very different
It
from
moves
this
everything on.
way.
Yeah. Especially with how Telemachus talks about
Mhm.
Mhm.
Athena and his relationship.
And tell me, from the Odyssey's version or from this version?
The Odyssey varies from this.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And
very
this portrayal of all the gods, most especially Athena, because the Odyssey, so far my experience of it only has Athena actively with like mentions of Zeus and Poseidon.
Mhm.
Do you think that that's the difference between a male's
Yes.
view of this gorgeous goddess and a woman's view
Well,
of her as a petty?
yeah, because Homer's
petty.
the original author. I'm of course reading a translation, also translated
You don't
by a
read
man.
ancient Greek?
No, I do not. As I'm like, Google, how do you say these names?
Yeah.
And Glaucus, she says it very well, that his god's head pushed his humanity away.
Yeah.
That he had no more. And now he went from this like generous, sweet, conscientious, fearful to completely pig-headed, full of himself and his own beauty.
Yeah.
You know?
Doesn't think twice about her.
No,
Since
not
this-
at all.
No.
Since I felt that because he was also sort of her first love, that she had a very naive view of what she didn't have enough experience to see what he could be. Of course, he's presenting his very best side to her.
True.
Absolutely. And she doesn't have any worldly experience whatsoever. And I feel like the key words in that spell is let their true self come out.
Ah.
See,
Yeah.
and
That's
because in
very
both
insightful.
cases, whether it was Scylla,
But it wasn't
She was
their
a
true
monster.
self. It was what she wanted them to be.
oh, but
I
she
can't
didn't
remember. I
want him
think
to be a
it's
monster.
Aedes
Well-
that tells her that like
Yeah.
that Scylla wasn't destined to be I mean she was, because that's what her name means, but like that's not her true form. That's what
It may not be her.
Circe wanted her to be. So when Circe turned Glaucus into a god, it was what she wanted for him. It might not be what his true form was, but once he became a god, because I believe that as a man, he was genuinely a good man who would have, if she was immortal.
Because of his you think maybe his humanity
Yeah.
kept him
Because
grounded?
if you became a god and could do whatever you want and live forever, you probably would lose your humanity pretty
all the
quickly
yarn
too.
forever.
It says, I gathered those flowers of true being and brought them to the cove where it was said Scylla bathed each day.
Mhm.
So in her mind at that time,
That's what she thought
it's
was
the
happening.
true self.
Ah.
But Aedes does come back and say, silly girl.
Yeah, is that what you
It
think,
was
or
your
was
will.
it what you want?
Yeah.
Because
It was her-
witchcraft is all about will.
Mhm.
Oh yeah.
So
Do you think
Yeah.
the word Priscilla, the name Priscilla, has any relation to Scylla
I don't know.
other than just
Yeah.
a core? I mean,
I think etymology of words is fascinating, but I
Yeah.
don't know.
okay.
Priscilla's such a pretty name.
I mean, Scylla is a pretty name.
Yeah. I don't know. Something about it I don't like the look of the word.
Okay.
I don't know why. It might be the SCY. It's not like
Yeah.
If it was an
comfortable-
I, might be different. If it was a Y, it's more like it reminds me of that. What is that kind of blade that's curved? That's like a sill.
I don't know.
I don't know. I'll have to think about that one. Anyway,
So that's interesting that his humanity kept him tempered and the transformation took the lid off of that.
Yeah.
It's like if you guys watch Buffy the Vampire Slayer on the way back, no, or I mean any vampire tale is like
I used to love
you get
Yeah.
transformed,
I
the
loved
demon
Buffy.
comes in, you're still this lovely human, but not really.
Right,
Like any
yeah.
trace of humanity is gone, and you're
I
just
mean,
a monster now.
In the way that they talk about it and the way that an experience of being a human feels like sometimes, that you're so bared down upon as a human and all of the things of your day-to-day life, like his father and his fishing, and they're not catching enough fish. He's just got so much crap to deal with as a human that as soon as it's all taken away, I can understand feeling like you are completely unstoppable. You can do whatever the hell you want because you don't have to think about any of those things anymore.
And you could have anyone and anything you want.
Exactly.
It's fame too, right? Like, I mean, it's an allegory for
going
fame.
to his head.
Yeah. Scylla did not have that experience of fame
No.
because
Or
she
people-
is also famous or infamous, right? Everyone knows her name by the end.
It's like someone who wins the lottery,
Ah.
go off completely off the deep end, and then end up ruining their lives.
well, she doesn't see the border because she gets to live outside of the borders and their rules. She is willing to dare things that others didn't. Like, maybe we want to talk about that later about when she goes and takes the golden tentacle or something, or what was it that creature's
Tail
Oh,
of,
the
Trigon.
tail,
Trigon.
the
Trigon,
Trigon. Now, is that tail? Is he like a sea scorpion?
He's a ray.
He's a manta ray.
Right. Which I
Oh.
didn't get for most of it. I was
Yeah.
imagining like some kind of like triangular shaped thing, and then when I understood he was a ray, I was like, that's the end of a spear.
Oh,
Okay.
okay, that makes way more
I
sense.
Trust
googled
me.
it and I was like, "Oh, okay, got it." Now I can.
In my
because
brain,
before
he
it
was just-
so like amoebus and like I don't know what we're talking
the great
I
about.
don't
wings.
know.
Oh, okay, now I get it. He
Yeah.
was
See, for
the
some
wings of
reason,
a
he was
manta
like
ray.
a weird sea scorpion
Yeah.
because that tail could come and strike you. But
Yeah.
I'm like, well, okay, now a ray that.
He's the
that do-
manta ray god or whatever.
How did
they
I
call
not
it.
see that?
Trust me, the spear in my head, the spear looked real dumb for a
Yes.
long time.
Happening.
And then at the end, when I understood it was the spot, like the tail
The
of a
barb.
manta ray.
The barb,
like,
yeah.
Okay, that's reasonable as a spear.
Yeah.
Also less dangerous because mine was like sticking out on the sides, sort of like a tricorn hat. You know?
Okay.
No wonder it poked Odysseus in the
Odysseus.
Odysseus in
Yeah.
the face. Which is spoilers for the other book I'm reading. I did not know that's how his end came.
Oh.
Circe wonders if parents can ever see their children clearly. She notes, so often when we look at our children, we see only the mirror of our own faults. What part of herself does she see when she looks at Telegonus? What are her strengths and weaknesses as a parent? So loaded.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I think she's right. That statement is absolutely truth. We
Yeah.
see only the mirror of our own faults.
Yeah.
And maybe more so depending on how much your parents express that to you too. So when she looks at Telegonus, she sees wildness.
Mhm.
She sees restlessness. She also sees his charm and ability to bring people to him.
Yeah. He's so different from her that you would assume raising a child in that situation. And she even says, like, he never paid attention at all to any of the magic that she tried to instill in him or anything that she tried to teach him. He didn't pay attention, she thought, at least. And you would think that raising a child that way, they would end up maybe more like you, you know? But he couldn't. She's somewhat content in her exile at that point, at least. And he, like, can't wait to get out of there. To the point where she's like, well, no, of course you can't go anywhere, you know, even though he's not exiled, you know, the rules don't apply to him the same way they do to her. So it would be hard to raise, I mean, I don't know, I don't have any children, but I can imagine for her, from her perspective, raising a child that seemed that ungrateful would be a huge challenge. And it seemed like she was struggling for the first half of his life, at least, you know, just trying to keep him from killing himself and jumping off a cliff, it seemed like. Yeah.
But I think she, like, his nonconformity to her kingdom, let's say, like, that's very parallel to her nonconformity to her kingdom, right? Very typical, right? Children do not they do not want to conform to what their parents want for them.
Sure.
She has a lot of strengths as a parent. I mean, I felt very akin to her. I would do anything to protect my child, like absolutely anything. And then she does.
Oh, yeah.
She sacrifices herself again and again to keep him safe. There's nothing so powerful that she will not stand against it. Like, that fierceness, I think, is her major strength as a parent. And then her willingness to give way once the danger's gone and let him go be himself. Like, it's so important to let your children be themselves, right? What do you think some of her weaknesses are, or any other strengths?
Yeah, I don't know. I was thinking about, this is not an answer to your question, but I was thinking about how you said, you know, she would do anything, and then she does. She, goes to the deepest depths of the ocean to find Trigon and, you know, find a way to protect her child. And it ends up being so much simpler than she thought it was going to be.
I
And
love
when
that.
and
Duh,
when
you're
he
the first one who
says-
ever asked.
He's like, yeah, you're the only one that ever would do it. Of course you can have it. And you know what I love most about it is she doesn't tell anybody how
Uh-huh.
easy it was.
That's true.
You know,
That's a
that
good
she-
point.
Everybody's like, well, you went to the the deepest depths of the ocean to do this, or and she's like,
Yeah.
you don't know what I've done, but she didn't tell anybody. Like, yeah, he just gave it to me. He just turned around and let me cut his tail right off, and I was like, are you sure?
Yeah, just return it when you're done.
Yeah,
Just whenever.
Well, that's more of her personal morality, though.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Is that she stands by what she's willing to do.
Right.
You know,
Well,
and
and
she got a benefit from it.
yeah,
Well, and I noticed that even throughout the book, the promise that she must return it, she didn't. Even though she kept it longer, it still weighed on her.
yeah.
It's like, okay, I know I got to return it. I'm not
She
ready.
needed it for something.
I don't know what I needed. I don't even know if she knew what she needed it for, but it wasn't quite ready
think
to
she
let it
did.
go. You think she knew?
I think she knew that because I think when he returns with it, she could have returned it right then, but I think there was some line or something about how she decided to keep it for some reason.
A little bit longer.
She doesn't tell us. She just says I'm not done with it yet.
Yeah.
My thought was because there was still danger from Athena.
Yeah, I
Because
could see
Yeah.
I thought she
Yeah.
was afraid of the wrath because the vision came true.
Mm-hmm.
Or that she felt some like guilty need to protect Penelope and
Mhm.
Telemachus
if
because
you
she wasn't bonded with them at that point.
yeah.
Mm-mm.
If you want to talk about weakness, she's very closed off to her child as far as her own personal history.
Yeah.
And for good reason, because I think that she is afraid that he would be afraid
Mhm.
of her or not trust her or whatever if he knew what she had done. But he does end up knowing, eventually. And Telemachus also ends up knowing and is like fine with it,
Yeah.
I mean, he helps her overcome what she has done, at the end to right the wrongs. Kind of.
Well, that's back to your true self.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like the person who truly loves you can see the true
Yeah,
self.
that's true.
And they don't turn away.
But her son wasn't that person, that she didn't feel like she could be
Right.
open with in that way, which I, can understand that being a parent, you don't want your child to know everything about you.
Nope.
And they may or may not ever, or you may wait until they are an adult to tell them about
Mhm.
certain things about your past, but
And if you have fears, you don't want to teach your children to have the same fears you might have. You
Yeah.
want them to be able to stand and embrace life on their own, in a sense.
which I don't really feel like she does.
Mm-mm.
I think she keeps him guarded to a point where he has to rebel because he can't, he needs to get off of the island,
Mm-hmm.
She could have raised him less afraid in her mind, even though he didn't seem to be afraid of at all of, what could happen to him.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't there one part where she goes, "All this time I could have told you, I could have prepared you for the world."
Mhm.
Yeah,
they
that's
didn't.
exactly what I was thinking
She
about.
doesn't
Is
work
Yeah.
she paints a rosy picture of the
Yes.
world.
Yeah, she does. She
And
lies about all of the things that his father had done.
Yeah.
He doesn't know his true father.
Nope.
And when he's out ready to go leave and find him, she's like, oh crap, maybe I should have told him some more truth and
Yep.
less lie.
Yep.
Is it kind of like the situation where, the dad takes off and leaves the mom to fend for herself, and so she tells the kid, "Oh, he was a war hero, or he was an astronaut, or some great thing that he'll have this great opinion of this imaginary father,"
Yeah.
not knowing. Oh,
Well,
But I
because
think
in a
she
way to
did
protect
believe
him.
all of those things about him. I think that she knew his faults and his attributes, but she loved him regardless of it.
mm-hmm.
I don't think that he was just a comfort to her in the way that Hermes was.
Mhm.
She legitimately cared for him,
Mhm.
and yeah, I think that she can believe all the good things, or maybe she just wants to believe all the good things that she, tells
well, children
Telegonus about it.
children find their self-worth in their parents because your parents are part of your identity.
Sure.
So you find a certain amount of your identity in their
Right.
value in the world. So sometimes when you are negative about a parent, that creates a negative self-image for
Mhm.
the child. So maybe that's an aspect too of not just trying to protect him from the horrors of the world, but also to
Not to cut
provide
down.
that to build him up. I
That
don't
makes
know.
sense. Yeah, because you don't want your parent to be bad mouthing the other parent.
Mm-mm.
You know, like everybody knows that that's not a good way to
Well,
raise a child, regardless of how
But
you feel
Odysseus
about
didn't even know about Telegonus, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's the contrast between the father image in Telegonus's mind versus the experience, the father that Telemachus
it.
encountered
Actually knew.
and the bitterness. It reminds me of like when my aunt died. I got to reunite with my half brother, and he and I both were raised separately by our mother, and we had very different experiences. And I didn't talk about her to him because I knew that he had a different experience than I did.
You don't want to taint
And
it.
I'm not going to taint his experience. And also, here's this person that has this great image, and then that's not a good way to have this connection with him as the one who's bad mouthing the only mother he ever knew. And it was better for me not to say anything. He ended up learning more about what her true nature was on his own, and that was better because I don't. It's not for me to take away to spoil the experience that he had, just because I did not have that.
Well, that's a perfect segue to the next question. Circe's sister. I don't know if I agree with this question, just as I read it.
That's her sister, Pasiphae.
Yeah,
I wasn't quite sure.
Is it an I sound?
Pasiphae.
Okay.
Pasiphae.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It was just Pasiphae in my head.
Pasiphae.
Circe's sister, Pasiphae, begins the novel as a major antagonist. How does our perspective of her change after Circe's visit to Crete? My perspective of her didn't change.
No, she just maintained to be an awful presence in her life.
She's horrible.
Yeah.
Like, my sister didn't have the thoughtfulness that you had as a sister to your brother. She has said poisonous things that have leached into my relationship with my mother. She did not have a respect for the fact that my relationship with my mom was one thing and her relationship with my mom is another thing. And so that is a terrible thing to do. And Pasiphae, she not only amplifies the poison in the family, but she spreads it by planting the seed. Circe thought she had a special bond with her brother.
Yeah.
And her sister strips that away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's never liked any women.
Yeah.
He liked that you tended to his needs.
Yeah, that you paid attention to him.
You served a purpose to him.
Yeah.
And it completely spoils the way that she remembers. Yeah. It was heartbreaking when her brother left and didn't take her with him. And you were like, well, why not? Because you are under the impression it's told from her perspective that he loved her just as much as she loved him.
I mean, I have to give him a little credit for his coming to say, hey, we can all do this.
Yeah.
Because the other two didn't.
No.
But yet it was only to serve his own means there too, because it's like, okay, it's time for me to tell, because you're all going to find out anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyways, don't be too mean to Circe. Bye.
Yeah. Also, I'm not going to help you ever again.
Nope.
But I feel like Pasiphae was trying to do she was a horrible person, brought up in the culture that is how you survive and that's how you do things.
Yeah.
That you cannot trust someone, you cannot give anyone an inch of compassion, or it will cost you. And that's how she was raised. I think being so much older, that maybe also that is the world that she was exposed to. Isn't she older than?
Circe's the first child.
Circe's the first child? This whole time.
Pasiphae and Persis are born so close together that the father forgets if they're twins or not.
Yeah.
Are they born from different mothers?
No, they're all.
That's how they get their
They're
witchcraft.
all Persis' daughter and son.
Perseus. No.
Persis is the son.
Perseus
Perse
is the son.
is the mother.
Percy, yes.
And she's forbidden to have.
That's right.
Yeah,
Well,
you can't have anymore.
No, I think Circe is the last one because he's like, if this is how it's I think
Circe's the first child. That's how the book opens.
But when
She's
she
the
rebelled,
last to reveal herself.
yeah, she's last. That's what it is. Because he's like, and the mother's like, she's awesome. I'm gonna have a gazillion more.
Yeah, so
And
much
he's
amber around my neck.
Yeah.
And he's like, nah.
Zeus was like, no.
Yeah.
Zeus's condition was that there'd be no more.
Okay.
Zeus's rules are the
Okay,
ones.
so isn't this wild that their father let some other man dictate whom he has children? I mean, that level of intimacy.
Or control. Yeah.
Speaking about Pacify and how you're saying she works within the system that she knows how to work within.
Yes. Like her mother.
Which comes to
Yeah.
fruition to the fact that she literally is like, it gives birth to a beast, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's
Because
so proud.
It's the only way that she knows to get any sort of respect, any sort of attention, for
Mhm.
anybody to pay attention to her. She could have gone the way of Circe and used her witchcraft that she knows, she's not as good, but she could have been if she tried. But she's like, I know a pretty easy way that didn't seem that easy. a way that I could, get some attention being paid to me,
Cut it out of me.
Yeah, and doesn't care what happens to anybody in the process of that happening, including Circe and Daedalus.
Yep.
But look, this is how awful a sister she is. She could have called anybody, but she intentionally called Circe so she could just torture her with
She
this.
couldn't call anybody because
Let's-
she knew the brothers would not help her.
Yeah.
Okay, that's true.
And there's
That's
no
true.
one else she could trust with it.
I think she knew
Like, Circe
Circe's-
does think, like, why the heck is she torturing me with this?
Yeah.
But then Pasiphae does say, like, no, brothers would not come.
Yeah. I think a lot of them know her power before she knows it herself
Ah,
and take
Yeah.
advantage of the fact that
Yes.
that she doesn't know her
Yeah.
own power.
Yeah.
And that's how they, treated her as a child and
Yep.
into her, before she's outcast and then afterwards as well. So I think that Pacify choosing to call on Circe was not only to humiliate her and to put
Mhm.
her in a position like that, but also because she knows that she is a strong witch, and if something happened, she would be there, and she is powerful.
I thought it was so unfair when we find out that it's Pasiphae's goal to create a monster.
Yeah.
With her bestiality.
Mm-hmm.
And I also wondered, like, okay, one thing at a time. It's not fair that it's Daedalus's fault.
Right. Why is it
Yeah.
his
When
fault?
he made her the thing she asked for,
Yeah.
and then she used it the way she intended.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. It's not his fault. It's not his. It's it's his burden in life that now he has to deal with the Minotaur and has to build the labyrinth in order to keep it contained because he feels like it's his burden to. But it's not. You're right. That's not fair.
It just
It's not
do
his
everything
problem.
she said to do.
But he knows that if it doesn't
No
make it
one
his
made
problem,
her lay
nobody's
down with
going
that
to.
beast.
She wanted to do
She
it.
wanted it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Zeus comes to Earth, and he comes in different forms, including a sacred cow, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm pretty sure that was just Zeus.
Yeah. Everybody's being all tricky, thinking
Yeah.
they're doing something. Everybody's just sleeping with everybody else.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
But it runs in the family.
yeah.
Wait, is that why Zeus really loves monsters?
Because they're his children?
Yeah.
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 No,
Because they
sure.
say, no, you can't kill these things. They thrive on the monsters.
I loved Ariadne's, like, love for him, though.
Yes.
Mhm.
How does Circe's time with Daedalus affect her? She finds real love.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm. And she finds that she is worthy of love.
Yeah.
That she is lovable. That
Mhm.
Yeah.
because up until this point, no one has loved her.
Mm-mm.
And I think at that point she confirms what she believes to be true is that humans are worthy of, that they're not all terrible or they're good, or the way that she feels about them and the way that Prometheus felt about them is right,
Mhm.
because her experience with humans up till that point was Glaucus,
Mhm.
who did not end up being the way that she expected him to be,
Mhm.
and ruined her perspective on it. So I
Mhm.
think not only it taught her that she's worthy of love, but also that humans are too,
Yeah.
because he was mortal.
And he gave her that beautiful womb.
Yeah.
He opened her to
She didn't even know what
more
it
of her
was.
craft
Yeah.
that she was then able to unlock and discover.
Man, I would have loved to see that. Every time I thought of that, I thought about the one time, Katie, that I went to your grandparents' house, and I saw your grandma's loom in that room, the whole room, in that ginormous loom, and it was just beautiful.
That is a dream, to have a room, like a weaving room.
A weaving room.
Yeah. It's not going to happen in the house I live in, because when the first bedroom is vacated by the children, it's going to become a walk-in closet.
Oh, nice.
Daedalus makes an indelible mark on her,
Yeah.
and
It's like the first real step towards becoming herself.
yeah. Circe begins the novel feeling very close to her baby brother Aedes. Why do their paths diverge so wildly? Why do you think he makes the choices he does? Because he's a selfish god.
Yeah.
He walks in privilege as a male too, because he has
True.
none of the women have autonomy really, unless they scheme or connive and steal to get it.
Because
Go ahead. But being all the males, they can walk in whatever privilege that they have.
Well, on that, like Pasiphae and Circe don't have any agency.
No.
Because she only serves to go off to Minos and be a treaty binder.
Yeah.
And then Circe has no value to them, only is threat.
Right.
You know? But the boys can go off and do whatever the heck they want to do. Like, what was Persis doing in Persia? Like, there's some scary stories probably from that, and I don't know any of those stories.
No, I don't either. Yeah, you don't really know a whole lot about him.
But he sounded dark and messed up.
Yeah, it did sound scary.
Hey, Ms. Author, that would be another book you could write.
Right, Madeline. Write us that book.
Write us that book.
I think at some point she talks about, like, how every story, that so-and-so is told, or, like, all these epic tales, they all end with a woman being, humiliated or put in her place, or, like, she's learning her, her point in life. It's like, why is every story end up being about this,
So why did their paths diverge so wildly? I think, Karin, you put it very well, that he has every privilege allowed to him.
Mm-hmm.
He can do whatever he wants.
Yeah, she can't.
Circe has no agency to do that.
Her path was determined by someone else.
Until it wasn't, right?
Until she finally feels that breath of her own self.
Yeah.
Why do you think he makes the choices he does? Because he can.
Because he can do whatever he wants.
I mean, Circe's nature is different and not different. Like, she's wrathful, like her parents, every sailor comes. Yeah. Odysseus is like, how do you know that none of them were good?
It doesn't matter.
I just know that at the core, they're all deserve to be piggies.
Yeah. They're all pigs.
I never thought about them still being sentient in their mind.
Yeah.
When I'd heard that story, that was so grotesque.
Yeah.
It's like in Pinocchio, where they go to Pleasure Island and they all become asses.
Yeah.
But they're still themselves in the donkey body.
Or in Spirited Away, when her parents become pigs.
Oh.
Although at that point, I don't think that they retained their sentience in the same way.
So, very good. So he makes the choices he does because he can.
Yeah.
Circe tells us that she recognizes parts of herself in Medea. In what ways are the two women similar? In what ways are they different? Well, I think there's Medea and Jason.
Yeah.
Okay, Medea is famous in storytelling.
You saw me looking like, when you're done with that cast of characters, pass it this way.
She's famous in storytelling because she murders her own children for her gain. There's another very popular novel about Medea as well. And I think there's some Greek plays about her too. Jason is Jason of the Argonauts, so he's a great hero. He was sent to take the golden fleece from Aedes, and then he would get his kingdom back because it was stolen from him by a greedy uncle who promised to give it back if he could get this golden fleece, which is an impossible task, except Medea decides to help him. So Medea is daughter of Aedes and future murderer of her children. to spite her husband Jason. Circe can see that their relationship is poisoned.
Right.
She and all that she saw comes true for Medea, which leads to Medea's downfall. How are the two women similar? Extremely powerful sorceresses.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, also wrathful.
And also blinded by first love.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yep. Because Medea would not hear. She would not hear reason. She instead accuses Circe of being lonely and jealous.
Yeah.
When Circe really, she just sees what's on the horizon for her niece. And though
Right.
she is so hungry and thirsty for companionship.
But she doesn't realize she is until Medea speaks it, and then she's like, maybe you're right, maybe I am lonely.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think she had realized that she was until somebody pointed it out to her.
I think that's such an interesting thing to keep happening for Circe. And it's something I really relate to.
Mm.
Like, one time someone important to me asked me if I was happy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, are
You're
you
like, well,
are
I
you at
never
least
thought about
happy?
it.
And now I've learned that's a seriously poisonous question. Do not ask people if they're truly happy.
Yeah.
Because then they'll start looking at it.
Yeah.
And then they might start making dangerous choices. I didn't make dangerous choices. I did some daring things, but
I guess you don't think about happy, not happy. You
Don't
live
think
your
about
life.
it.
No,
Don't
you just live
think
your
about
life each day, and
Yeah.
I feel
or
like
do and then have an existential crisis and come out and be a different person.
Yeah. Figure it out.
That's
you
another
know.
thing too. But it happens more than once. What is some other times that people point something out to her where she was going along and you could kind of see the truth of it once it's pointed out?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
And you don't know if she's actively doing it or if she's just, if it's out of her mind on purpose.
self-fulfilling
or...
prophecy.
didn't it
Right,
happen
or-
once when the maid when they decided, this is our dumping ground for all the problematic maidens that we don't want to deal with.
Yeah, yeah.
Hey, you don't have a choice who we dump on your island because you can't leave.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's another representation of her being the victim of other people's perception of her
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
So they're similar in their power in a sense, but they're different in how they use that power and apply it, and their reaction to motherhood, most certainly, because Medea is one of the most infamous mothers in all storytelling, and yet Circe. Go ahead.
I don't actually know her story, but I figure like she's like the Lizzie Borden of mothers.
Yeah. So, did you guys ever see the movie The Others? It's a Nicole Kidman ghost story movie. That's that's like a telling of Medea as well.
Oh, okay.
You should watch The Others, and I'm going to
That's a
stop
good
talking. And anyone else who's not sure about Medea,
Writing that down. I always get the next books or music or podcast or movies, particularly, that I should watch from these.
It's a good movie.
it's
I'm
one
not
of
going to say anything.
Yeah. I'm impressed that you watched it, Katie. It's a spooky movie.
It is spooky, but I'm not.
It's so good though.
Yeah.
I didn't used to like movies with Nicole Kidman, but I've come to appreciate her as a strong woman. I
have mixed feelings about her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this is an excellent movie. Excellent movie. And she
just considering what she
does
put
a
up
great
with
job.
her ex-husband,
Oh yeah.
so.
I keep seeing the meme of be as happy as Nicole Kidman after she signed her divorce paper. Circe says to Telemachus, do not try to take my regret from me. What does she mean by that?
Yeah.
How has her regret shaped her?
She says to him, like, do you feel the same way about all the maidens that you hung or hanged? And he's like, I will own that and I will think about it for the rest of my life, and it's a regret that I am going to have. So they share that, the fact that, like, I need to live with this regret in order to learn that it's something that I need to move forward from, or to right a wrong that I have made, or whatever. You know, it's her fault that Scylla is who she is and the way that she is.
Yes.
She could easily forget about it, not easily. She could choose to ignore it and
not take responsibility.
But then she knows that she has this compassion for humanity and for mortals, and knowing that Scylla's out there and, you know, eating 12 sailors at a time every day, you know, I don't know, for thousands of years. It's at some point not when she can finally do something about it, she knows she needs to do something about it because it's her responsibility.
Yeah.
And I felt like she had compassion, maturity, and life over the ages have shaped her feelings towards Scylla and how she made Scylla what she is. And it was, I feel like when she changed, when, dealt with Scylla, that was also her freeing Scylla from this thing that Scylla didn't have agency over. This was something that Circe did to her.
Yeah.
It's almost like in order for her to enjoy her freedom, she had to right these wrongs.
There are people who say, if you ask, like, what's your biggest regret in life? They're like, I don't have regrets. Everything, that I have experienced has shaped me into the person that I am today. I don't live with regrets, but that's bullshit because everybody has regrets, and without them, you don't learn. You don't.
You're a sociopath. If you don't have any regrets on how you behave,
right?
You're
like,
sociopath.
I've treated everybody just fine. I've never wronged a person in my life, and even if I have, I don't regret doing it, even though you have hurt that person or whatever. Mm-hmm. It's not a healthy way to live or to tell people you live, because it's not true. If you do think that, Mm-hmm. It's a nice thing to think about, that like, I love my life now and I'm happy in who I am because because of the way that I am, so I don't regret anything that I did. But you can't become the person that you're meant to be without
dealing with the regret.
Right. You can have both things. Yeah. Be regretful and then also know that if you ever changed anything, you wouldn't be who you are.
You have to be grateful for those regrets in a way.
Yeah. It is the human condition, right? So maybe mm-hmm. that brings her closer mm-hmm. to that desire for humanity mm-hmm. because you have to have those like highs of, and perhaps in this case is like righteousness or good behavior, and the lows where you were not your best self. Like usually we think of the highs of like, mm-hmm. oh, I'm having a good experience, and the lows are like, oh, I had a sad experience. But maybe those highs are like when you are being your best self to when you are being your worst self. Yeah. Like, and then to want to do better from them. Mm-hmm. Like, we don't have the ability to have foresight, right? The way that Circe does. Mm-hmm. So it does terrify me, the idea, like, if you were given the chance to go back and change that one big regret, sure. What would the outcome really be? Like, that's terrifying.
Like, I've seen enough time travel movies to know that that's not a good idea.
To know that, yes, you regret that you did that, but if you took that out, what other bigger issue might you have? Yeah. Because that regret from that item, that kept you from doing something different or worse in the future.
Like, hopefully you've grown and changed because of your regrets. Right. Like Circe does, I think it connects her to that desire for humanity. And same for our dear Telemachus. Who would you have play Telemachus in a movie?
He's supposed to be like mid-30s, right?
Yeah. Serious, quietly, thoughtfully insightful. Katie's got a great
I'm thinking about. I was telling James we were reading this book, and he was like, "Can I suggest a movie for us to watch?" Which ended up being Clash of the Titans.
Yeah, of course.
Which is a terrible movie.
It is. It's wonderful and terrible so too. Cheesy. Yeah, no, I love hate it
about
too.
The people in that movie and how oh my god, it's. Like,
I'm
Liam Neeson as Zeus and Ralph Fiennes as Hades is so cheesy. But, I thoroughly enjoyed it. So when you were talking about casting characters, all I could think of was, what's his name? Sam Worthington, that plays Perseus.
Oh, no.
Because he's so unbelievable in that movie, because they choose him because he's like a handsome meathead, but man, that man cannot act. Like, this is not convincing at all.
No, it's such a bad movie.
It's a bad movie. It was really fun to watch, and you know what I loved about it? It was like an hour and 40 minutes. I'm like, thank you, movie, for not being one of those 2-hour long.
Right? When movies used to be like bite-sized like that?
I love that. I was like, this is perfect. I could watch it in one night without falling asleep.
Yep. I kind of miss that.
I don't know who I'm going to cast, but it's nobody in that movie. Because, there are good actors in that movie, because I love Ralph Fiennes so much. So James is like, you'll love it. I was like, oh my god, this is
actually
so bad.
A young Ralph Fiennes might be a perfect Telemachus.
Joseph?
Yeah.
He's a little older. He's a little too old.
Well, it could just be anyone from Space and Time. How's that?
Okay.
I want Oscar Isaac to play Odysseus.
Okay.
He's the guy from
Yeah,
Moon Knight.
that's perfect.
Yeah.
Because he
I'm watching him
has
on Moon
that
Knight, but-
dynamism.
Yeah,
I'm
he's got a
disappointed
charm.
in Moon Knight.
I'm only on the
I'm
third
not.
one.
Okay, well, I won't say more then.
But
Can I
I
tell
like
you-
that actor.
Can I tell you
Yeah,
what I'm
he's
disappointed
perfect.
about Oscar
Yes.
Isaac? He voices Gomez Adams, but he
Yes.
would be the absolute perfect in real life Gomez
Oh,
Adams.
yeah.
Yes.
I'm mad
yeah.
that there's
Yes.
not a live action.
Yes.
Sorry.
Sometimes you get
I'm
in my
mad
head
about it.
and you take it out and you say the thing. Because we
he's
just
so good.
watched. I know we just watched that and I was like,
Why isn't he in real life? Can we make a live action movie and let Oscar Isaac?
I can
be
totally
him?
see him.
I
Yeah.
know.
He's like, that is him. Mi
Yeah,
amor.
Latin,
Mi amor.
smooth,
Oh,
suave, handsome, with
But
a little
also, like,
mustache.
goofy too. Because
Yes.
Gomez has to be a little
he's so
goofy,
goofy.
right?
Yeah.
Because the
That's what I'm
last
saying.
one was
He's charming. He's serious. He's badass. But he's also kind of funny and awkward.
The previous Gomez Adams from the Adams families is movies is
I don't know.
also answers the same kind of description.
Yes.
Because in his serious acting roles,
Mm.
he'll melt your heart. It's so sad that for such an excellent actor, his last movie was Mortal Kombat.
Oh no.
Why can't I think of his name?
I don't know who that is. I mean, I know who he is.
Yeah.
But I don't know his name. I'll Google it.
But he was a pretty Oscar Isaacs when not playing Gomez.
Mm.
Where were we?
We were talking about who we were going to cast.
Yeah,
But I think
but
we
that
got
was
off topic.
weirdly
Who would
that's
be
not
Circe?
in the reading group guidance.
Raul Julia.
would be
Raul
Circe?
Julia.
Raul,
Julia?
yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know how you say his last
Julia.
name. Julia.
Who would be Circe?
I don't know. I couldn't get a good
don't-
grasp of what she looked like in my mind.
The hair. What
I think
does her
you-
hair look like?
I think I'm
she's
always feel
blonde.
like
Okay, because Penelope
Yeah.
makes mention my hair doesn't match yours, and then she also said when they were out sailing on and they were stopping in shoreline,
Mhm.
that if she kept her hair covered, she could
I
go
think
under the
she
radar.
was like a glowing blonde because her eyes glowed
quite
too. 'cause
technically she all
Helios's
glowed. Yeah.
daughter.
Right. Oh,
So I
that's-
imagined her blonde and
Yeah,
young and beautiful, and I don't know.
that's true.
But also
Daughter of the
strong.
sun.
You know,
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm terrible at this game of like picking actors too.
Well, sometimes I'm thinking about it the whole book. I was
Mhm.
not in this because, like,
Uh-oh.
same. I did not like have a good grasp of her.
Right.
It would have to be someone who has like a strong look,
Yes.
almost not beautiful too.
Right.
Like
Mhm.
beautiful but not beautiful.
Very
you know?
strong bone structure.
Yeah.
One that they could make plain, but as she got older would be stunning.
More and more into her beauty.
Who plays
Yeah.
her-
That's
Yeah.
Toni Collette. It's Toni Collette then.
There.
Or no, it's she's playing like I'm sorry for anyone who loves Eleanor Roosevelt, but she's playing the ugliest first lady on the show First Ladies on Showtime.
Mm.
She is Mulder's love interest. Why can't I think of her name either?
What is the who plays her in the Marvel thing? What is it? Not the Immortals. What is that?
Oh, the Inhumans.
No.
The
Eternals.
The Eternals. Okay.
She's
Yeah,
a
the
character
Inhumans are
in that.
the
She
worst
is.
show ever.
I think so.
Excuse me? It has Anson Mont in it. It did not get its time. And
Oh,
We will
Gemma
agree
Chan,
to
who
disagree.
looks nothing like who I would assume
um,
Circe would look like, but
everyone who's listening who has any X-Files knowledge is screaming the name of the actress that I'm trying to think of.
From Vintage X Files? Like the
Yeah.
redheaded?
Yes.
Oh yes.
Gillian Anderson. Gillian Anderson.
That's
oh,
it.
Gillian
I
Anderson.
could've told you that
Absolutely.
if-
Cersei.
okay.
Absolutely. Yep.
You guys should watch First Wives, the First Women,
Oh,
or First
yes.
Ladies,
Yeah,
like,
First
whatever
Ladies.
it's called. It's very good.
Okay.
And gorgeous Gillian Anderson is giving great flattery to Eleanor Roosevelt.
I absolutely wholeheartedly agree with you on that.
And it doesn't have to be a young Gillian
I was
Anderson.
gonna say,
It
no.
could be a now Gillian
Yeah.
Anderson because she just gets more and more beautiful as she ages, and I want to know where the portrait of her, as in Portrait of Dorian Gray, is. Like
yeah,
she
somewhere.
is just getting more and more gorgeous.
That's
Stop
how
it.
I feel about in Wonder Woman.
Oh, yes.
Robin Wright plays
Yeah.
her aunt Antiope, I
Yes.
think. And
Yes.
she's so
Yes.
good in it because
Yes.
she's so strong.
Yes.
But man, she is so beautiful.
Yes.
I love Robin
yes.
Wright.
Yes, she
See?
is. Yeah.
It's possible. She might also be a possible Circe.
She's definitely
How
too
about
old.
she's just too old now?
She's Purse.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, there you
Because
go.
she can be very like pettish.
Yes.
You know, she's
Yeah.
done roles where she's very, you know,
Mhm.
like not coarse but prickly.
What was that one where she was the first lady?
That is
Was
House of
it-
Cards.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I didn't
liked
know where she got to
her
because
in
I
that,
backed off.
But
Well, he's a monster in
he's a
real
monster, and she became a monster
life. In the show.
in the show.
Yeah. But her actor opposite leading
Yes, we will
actor
not
is
speak
a
his name.
monster.
No,
Um,
that's why I only wanted to acknowledge her. part.
yes, she's brilliant in that. Up to what I watched. This question
Okay.
kind of confused me, so I'm interested in your insights.
Okay.
Circe says that when she first meets Odysseus, he seems nearly familiar to her. Why does she say that? Who, if anyone, does he remind her of? Well,
I was gonna say, I wonder if it's some sort of mystical thing, not knowing that she's going to birth his child, that she is reminded of her future child.
I wonder that too.
But
Because I
at
wouldn't
that
have
point,
picked
she's
up
not
on
aware
that.
yet.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying.
That's the thing. She's not aware of her power yet. But the power is starting to come up, but she doesn't recognize it yet. So maybe that's it.
She does know she has foresight because
Yeah.
she asked for a vision of the Minotaur.
That's true.
And she has a vision of Medea.
I
I don't know if she had a legit vision. Because she does do like a vision in the water
Mm-hmm.
of the Minotaur. Did she do like a proper vision for
Felt like it just
Medea?
came to her.
Yeah. I thought that was more her intuition.
Maybe.
But how do you separate those two
Right.
things?
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
Same
see,
thing.
this whole time, the time that Odysseus was with her, I kept confusing myself with his time with Calypso, because it's like, the man does not know how to stay on a boat. I mean, it's not really his fault, but I mean, it's like it takes him. I had to remember, oh yeah, it's not like he was on his 20-year exile with her the whole time.
No.
No.
He was only a short time, and then he gets back on the boat and
So
gets shipwrecked on
Yes.
Calypso's island.
Yeah,
Who,
so
who entices him? It reminded me. It finally dawned on me. Oh, Circe was the one with the banquet table.
Yeah.
It's like, I know I'd read that part with the pigs, but with the men, I thought they were coming to her cottage, and it didn't appear. It wasn't the same in my brain as all the stories I've
Mhm.
heard of this massive, gorgeous banquet table, and they all just sort of fall asleep.
Mm-hmm. I
Right?
think I could relate to why you might have that flipped in your brain for two reasons.
Okay.
One is 10 years fighting in Troy.
Yep.
So the exile by Poseidon and not being able to get home is half of his journey time. So the 20 years away, 10 years is war, and 10 years is exile.
Mhm.
But in the Odyssey, which you told me you'd read,
Mhm.
the story of Calypso is first, but it doesn't chronologically happen first, like as we learn here,
Yeah.
right? That this happens first, but it is told first in the Odyssey.
See, I felt that it didn't occur to me, oh yeah, he was only gone a total of 20 years, not 10 years in Troy and another 20
Mhm.
coming back,
Mhm.
being
Yeah.
gone 30 years. It's like, oh, 10 and 10. Yeah.
My knowledge of the Odyssey is a passage that I had to read in high school, and then many, many viewings of Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
That's such an awesome.
It is.
Oh, that song is in my head. I love it.
Man
Man of Constant Sorrows.
it's a great movie.
Yeah.
Okay. What is the significance of Circe's meeting with Trigon? How does it impact her emotional journey? Well, we talked about this kind of already.
Yeah.
It demonstrates her selflessness, her stick-to-itiveness.
Her bravery. Yeah.
The absolute reckless abandon of a mother who will do anything, even because she knew that this is the first time in all this time that she's disobeyed and left her island, hoping to sneak down under the radar before she gets caught. But at the same time, she's willing to bring down the wrath of Zeus if it
Right.
means protecting her son.
But
Credit-
nobody else that has ever come to Trigon has ever gone as far as she did to make it happen, because the things that they wanted were fame, fortune, whatever. And even, I don't think the experience of her as a mother doing whatever she would do to protect her child is not a universal experience amongst any of the goddesses
No.
who are mothers either.
That's true.
Like that, I don't think any of the ones that we know of would have done the same thing that she did to protect their child. I mean, we know for a fact that
They will eat their young.
They will eat them or other things.
Yes.
You know, that I think it shows her sliver of humanity in mortality, that she is willing to put herself at risk in that way to protect her child because she wants to protect her child so much, you know? She knows her child is mortal.
Well, a lot of the time the gods see their children as rivals too.
Yeah.
And she doesn't even know what Athena has seen.
Yeah.
And her just her willingness to set aside anything but his safety.
And she never even worries about what it is that Athena is so worried about either. You know, she doesn't care what it is that Athena is.
Her son comes first.
Yeah, she's not like, oh, well, maybe she's right. Maybe, I mean, there's a sliver of a second when she's saying, I'm going to take your child, but in return, I will send you a perfect child who's going to do exactly what you want, and everything's going to be fine. And she's, for a second, is like, that does sound nice, but no, I'm not going to do that. You know,
children are
she
not...
doesn't entertain that for a second. She thinks, yes, that does sound good, but I'm not... No, of course not.
Children are not sacks of flour. I'm glad that line got repeated because I think it's so important. Like, stupid people say that to grieving parents, you know? Well, at least you have other children, or you could always have more, or something stupid like that.
Yeah.
Not sacks of flour.
No.
Which you should say if you ever lost a child and someone said something stupid to you like that.
Yeah.
This is not the pet that you replace.
No. There are numerous references to crafts in the novel, including weaving, carpentry, and metalworking. What role does craft play in Circe's story? She finds herself. And it helps her connect with another woman.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love the bonding that she has with Persephone? Penelope. Penelope.
I love
Persephone,
Penelope's
someone else, that's
story.
right.
Like, her classic story is that, like, well, when I'm done weaving this cloak, I'll decide. So every day she weaves, and every night she takes out what she did, and then she just, sorry, I'm not done yet. Like, it's gonna take me a while. I'll make a decision whenever this thing is finally done.
Oh, geez, whenever.
And look, and she did that for over a decade. She didn't have to do that until the people started coming back from the war, and her husband wasn't among them.
Yeah.
And then after that, she had to put up with all that. And I just thought she was so brilliant. But also, I don't know that I could work so hard on something and then rip it all out. Night after night after night.
Good allegory of, like, or example of a woman using something delegated as, like, a womanly hobby, like a thing that's like, yeah, that's women's work, to find her power within.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
To hold the fate of that kingdom for a decade.
Yeah.
In her weaving hands.
Yeah, I love Circe's getting ready to leave, and she explains all these dangers that could come upon her, and Penelope's like, I have a little experience with one unwelcome visitor.
I love that. I love that.
With unwelcome
and
visitors.
She just had a small smile on her face. Yep. Like, I think I got this.
Yeah.
It's not my first chance.
Yep.
I love how there had to be, would you like to be the Witch of Aiaia? It's like, would you like to be the Dread Pirate Robbers? We're going to need a new one.
I totally thought about that. It's just the name.
Yeah, you should need a new one. You want to be here? I'll teach you my ways.
And I love this bonding. I mean, at first I thought, okay, here's the mother of the king, here's the wife of the king, and here's the mistress, and somehow they're all together, and they got to make a life together.
Yep.
Yeah, but how long
you staying? Oh, I don't know. However long your son says.
So I'm done weaving this cloak.
Yeah.
Which that does happen. Like when the cloak is done, a transition happens. Yeah.
I was intrigued by how I'm not experienced in weaving like I am in other ways. Like how Penelope removes her unfinished thing to start a new thing. I'm like, you can't do that, right?
I don't know.
I don't think you can do that.
Well, I don't know.
In a way to save it to then go back to?
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, she is a goddess.
Does she cut the threads?
I don't know.
It didn't say that she cut the threads.
She said she removed her unfinished weaving.
Yeah.
Whatever, tapestry, whatever, to start a new one.
But she's not a goddess. She's just a human.
Yeah, she's mortal.
Yeah.
Maybe his loom is so advanced and fancy that it's easy.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true. A day's worth of work, wouldn't it take a day to tear out? I don't know.
Well, also like the careful craftsmanship of a well-made thing to show your care and concern. But on the back to the subject of the sharing the loom, I love when Circe laughs to herself that letting another woman touch your loom was tantamount to letting her lie with your husband.
Yes.
Okay.
You never weave on another woman's loom.
Here you go.
Oops, kind of did that.
And then she's like, hey, do you have a black cloak I can borrow? She's like, no, but you can use my loom.
Oh, I love that so. I love
I've got
everything
yarn
about
and
that.
I've got a loom. And she's like, okay.
I love everything. It's the like acknowledgement of like, okay, well, I got to use yours. You can use mine.
Sisters sticking together, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah. But also the like, well, I don't have this, so I'll make it.
Yeah.
You know?
I also loved that it didn't end up being what she was afraid it was. That when she feels like she's naive and trusting Penelope and letting them come there and use her, and she's like, well, maybe they're, what is she using me for? Like, why is she here? She figures it out. It's just to protect her son, right? And then they do but at that point I was afraid that it was going to go the way of like she was being tricked again, or something bad was going to happen, and it wasn't the genuine female friendship that she thought that it was going to be. But then it did end up being that. So
well, just like she was afraid, like, no way does Odysseus' son want to be your friend. She's got this distrust of, wait a minute, I've known enough about the ways of mankind and politics to know that.
Well, Odysseus said it.
Yeah.
But she only has Odysseus's viewpoint of the hierarchy, and he doesn't really. He was not the one who raised his son. Penelope raised his son, so that's why he is similar to his father in looks only.
Yeah. Circe is interested in Penelope from the moment she hears about her from Odysseus. What draws her to Penelope? Does this change over time?
She says, like, when Odysseus spoke of her, it was, in such a way that she was like, that does sound like an interesting person. You know, he speaks about her, getting, I can't remember exactly what he says about her, but like getting what she wants and being, steadfast and all of these things that is intriguing to Circe as, a mortal. She's like, well, that sounds like an interesting person. I would like to know. And then when she has the realization that, like, wait a minute, he told me that she gets whatever she, nobody knows what she's doing until it's done. I think that was the thing. It's like, nobody knows what she's crafting until it's happened and you didn't even see it happening. And it's true, because she doesn't see it happening until it is already come to pass that they are, living there with her and under her protection without her even realizing that's what they came there for.
Yeah. I think, the woman who, like, men tend to choose similar, like, what attracts you to her, and maybe I have those qualities.
Right.
Because you're attracted to me.
Similar.
Yeah.
Well, they both have inner strength.
Were you surprised when Telemachus refused Athena? Why or why not?
I wasn't surprised because I didn't see it in him to want that.
Nope.
And I wasn't surprised when Telemachus decided that he was going to take that offer. When she was like, well, do you want to do it? And he was like,
yeah.
He was like, yes, I do want to do that. You know, I was like, of
None
course.
of that was surprising. No.
It wasn't in that I knew that's really what he wanted to, but I will say when I did it, I audibly went, oh, shit.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, my God. I can't believe you just said it to her.
It was impressive.
I had an audible enough that my son, my youngest from upstairs turned around and goes, are you okay, Mom? I'm like, no, I'm fine. It's just a book. Just a book. Oh, shite.
I was impressed by it, though.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And, it's something about the way that Telemachus talks about Athena's demands on his life sort of made me think of, like, the way sometimes you hear abuse victims talk about about their abuse.
Yeah.
Like,
I wasn't sure at first if he was saying it in glowing terms that she would come to visit, but as he told his story and he refused her, you saw that no, it was a horror show that she inflicted upon him every time, and he
Circe
wanted nothing
also-
to do with that.
Circe also had no idea that that's what he meant by it, because when she goes to him and he's working on the boat and he's like, "I'm actually mad at you."
Yeah.
And she's like, "Why are you mad at me?" He's like, "Why would you think that I would do that?" And she's like, "I thought that the way that you talked about it was that you wanted it to happen, you know?"
Yeah. And that's
You don't
that's
know
the
me.
point.
You don't
Right.
know me. You don't know my life.
Yep. Yep.
So
And that's the point when he like shares that it filled him with shame that when she came to him. But I was really impressed with his strength of character.
yeah.
To also like, it's constantly these people truly discovering their true paths. Like, that's the flowers of true being, right? So finally Telemachus can say no to Athena. Circe encounters several famous figures from Greek mythology. Where were any of their portrayals surprising? Athena a little bit, because
A little bit, yeah.
I only saw her portrayed in positive helping light in the Odyssey.
From the male gaze.
Yeah. But mostly, like, in my experience of mythology, the gods are jealous, petty beings.
Yeah.
Who want what they want and will take it regardless of the consequences.
Yeah.
Rarely exhibiting fairness.
Odysseus was just another coloring of Odysseus, but it didn't really change.
It wasn't starkly different.
It was not starkly different. I mean, but you knew a person of his stature who was in that position of power had to be, as kind as he was with her, was also capable of immense cruelty.
Yeah.
I was surprised at the cruelty towards his son, because in the stories of the homecoming of, I mean, in the Odyssey, you only hear him up to the point that he meets his son and defeats his suitors and they all live happily ever after, the end. So to me, this was a content that to me it was, and
because I haven't finished the Odyssey yet.
That's always been my perception of it, because to me this is the part two, the book 2 of their story, that a continuation that's like where you get the full story of Telemachus and his relationship with his father after he comes home.
It honestly, personal note, like, makes me think of my own father, who was a tempest at home, but everyone else perceived him to the public as a very like magnetic personality. He must be the nice one, because my mom also suffers from RBF. Like, when really my mom was the like calm, centered one. So I appreciated Telemachus being able to tell the truth of his father.
But in going back to what we were talking about before, he doesn't do that to Telegonus, because he has like rose-colored glasses for what his father's legacy was, and he is the good older half brother to not spoil it for him.
Yeah. Yep. More of Telemachus being good.
Yeah.
How does Circe's relationship with her father change over the course of the book? What do you make of their final conversation?
It changes in that she decides to stand up to him.
Yep.
She knows her whole life how powerful he is, and in her mind she's afraid of him or looking for a way to please him and can't do it until she decides, like, he's just like every other god I've ever known. What makes him special? I can stand up to him like I've done to all of, to Athena.
Yep.
Like, she's just as powerful as Helios in a different way. And she's like, okay, well, I guess he's not the big scary guy that I always imagined that he was. She sees him for what he is, finally, instead of what she imagines that he is.
Yep. And she goes from being afraid of his wrath to knowing that she could withstand it or handle the consequence, or like she's okay with the
Or
consequences.
that he's lying about it.
yeah,
Because he can bring his
Yeah.
wrath down upon her head, but she knows he never will because he would have done it before, or she has this thing that she can hold against him to blackmail him, and she knows, like, he's, a blowhard who's going to say, like, well, if you do that, I'm going to do this. And she's like, but you're not.
yeah, you
because
haven't done it
I
yet.
haven't done it yet, and I'm going to go tell Zeus right now what I did, and if you wanted to stop me,
I mean,
or you're going to do
He
what I
could-
want you
because how many
what I
times
want
did he
you to
say
do.
I could turn you into stone, or I could, I could? He makes these threats, but why didn't he?
Yeah. I mean,
Well, because
he
she
didn't.
might still be useful.
Yeah.
Like I
Not
think that's
because
the thing
he
that holds
loves
him back.
her. Or
No,
anything.
no.
No. There's no love involved.
Usefulness.
Useful. Yeah.
And she says to him, like, you knew what those sailors were, and you let them come to my island anyway because you didn't care.
Mm-hmm.
Because he doesn't.
Nope. We see numerous powerful characters abusing their positions throughout the book. Are power and abuse necessarily connected? Are there any models for power without cruelty? Power and
Yes.
abuse. Ultimate
Yeah.
power ultimately corrupts.
Sure.
It's a truism,
unless you're
right?
Yeah. I think Circe's the example of that in a different way. You could speak about power as, like, your influence over other people or your own powers. I think you could read that two different ways. In that power and abuse do go hand in hand in this, and make an example of what it's like to be under somebody's thumb, right?
Because people only divvy out abuse on those that they have power over.
Right.
Well,
The abuse doesn't go upward; it only goes downward. I think.
let's examine that for a
Okay.
second in our examples. So obviously Helios, if nothing else, his abuse is neglect of her.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's wrathful, but it's usually neglectful. Her mother, same. She has no interest in this child except for what she can do, like take
Right.
the screaming AADs away. But Pasiphae and Persis, the two middle children, they are abusive. They seek out to torture her, but they have no power.
Right.
They perceive that they have power over her because because she will take it and not dish any of it back. She will not. They know that she will not stand up for herself.
Yeah.
So while they're not in a position above her. They're more lateral.
Mm-hmm.
They
They find their power faster, though, so that's a good point too.
Yeah, because she doesn't assume that she would have anything special about her because so many people have
told her
that
she was nothing.
there is nothing special about her.
Mm-hmm.
And she was the only one who sat at her father's chair hoping for some scrap. And I think that distracted her from seeking any power for herself.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas they never had any chance of getting a scrap from him, so they went, seeking it.
Which is to her benefit, ultimately, because she doesn't end up the way that they do in finding their power in however it is that they found.
In the ugly ways.
Right.
Yeah. Prometheus has power,
Mm-hmm.
and he uses it for good.
Yeah.
But he is punished for that.
Yeah.
So there are models of power without cruelty,
Yes.
but generally they are connected.
Right.
The end.
Or if you use your power for good, something cruel will happen to you.
Yeah, no good deed goes unpunished.
Right.
I mean, these things come from somewhere,
Yeah,
right?
that's true.
Mm-hmm.
Circe's gift is transformation. How does she transform from the beginning of the novel to the end?
Mm.
Why does she ultimately choose the path she does?
I mean, the ultimate transformation at the very end, of the book, she decides to change who she is and give up her divinity to become immortal because I feel like she knows that's how she can relate to people who she ultimately feels are worthy,
Mm-hmm.
and she never has met a god that she can relate to in that
Mm-mm.
way because
No.
she's not like them, So I think it's coming into her power in a way that's giving up. She gives up her power, right? So
Mhm.
there's, some poetic thing about that, that in order to become who she truly is, she has to give up what made her. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, she transforms from being, meek and quiet and timid to learning to stand up for herself and to use her voice that everybody has always told her was to her, devastation. Like, nobody likes you because of your voice. Like, literally her
Can you
voice.
imagine? They're like, it's like you start talking, they're like, oh.
They're like, I can't listen to you.
Ah!
I was warned about how terrible your voice
When,
is.
who is it? Apollo comes and he's like, hello, I'm
Please
here.
don't talk to me.
Yeah. It'd
Yeah.
be best if you talked as little as possible. I've been warned about you.
Yeah, please do not speak. I don't want to hear it. Here's your prophecy. I'll see you later.
It's been delivered.
Yep.
Bye now.
Please don't say anything.
You know what I feel like? It's like that Twilight Zone Eye of the Beholder. Where,
The beauty
where
one?
yeah, the one where they're like, oh my God, she's still so ugly. We can't stand it. Well, it's okay. We're going to put you in a place with all the other ugly people. And it turns out she looks like Marilyn Monroe. She's
Yeah,
gorgeous.
She's gorgeous.
And they all look
pig-like.
pig.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe it's like that. Maybe she actually has a
Yes.
fabulous voice. And it's charming and beautiful and lyrical. But the people are so ugly themselves
Yeah.
that anything of beauty, of real beauty, just repels them.
Yeah. I mean, she sounds like a human, and then she becomes a human.
I'm like, your voice is nails on chalkboard, like, and they
Yeah.
tell her that
Yeah,
all
I
the
know.
time. Like, sure, maybe you've heard people who don't have the most dulcet voices, but
I've never met anybody
you
that I'm
wouldn't
like,
be like,
oh my God, I can't listen. I mean,
shh,
yeah, please don't say anything.
I've heard audiobooks that I had to stop, but it wasn't because it really was not the quality of their voice, but the way they pronounce things or
Yeah.
the way
I've met
There-
people with accents that I don't particularly care for, or
I will say
the timbre of their voice or whatever.
there's
but
only, if I had any critique, and it's not with the author, in the Audible, there's one point where she mixed up the voices.
oh,
But I'm like, okay, and I was confused from. I'm like, no, I know who she's talking about, but she got so caught up with it and nobody else corrected it. I'm moving on.
well, I mean, the point of this book is Circe's transformation, and she
Yeah.
transforms many times over.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
she goes from her direct path is not weak and timid to
Right.
I'm a powerful human being now.
Yeah.
Because she goes from ignored to more ignored to vicious to loved to lonely to loved again.
Right.
It's an interesting journey of that, who she started as to who she became.
But maybe that's the point. Transformation is never a straight line,
True.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
unless
love
you're a
this
butterfly.
But that's not even as
There's a
straightforward
message
as
in
we
the
think
middle.
that it
No.
is. Yeah. There's some interesting research where they open up the chrysalis and it's not what you think
Yeah.
inside. Yeah.
That's true.
It's very interesting. I'm glad you guys enjoyed this
Yes,
book.
I did enjoy
it. It was a delicious treat. And I'm excited that it went in this direction because I want to look at the maidens again, because some of this relates, some of the mythology in this I think relates back to the maidens. I can't think of the author's full name, but you know, we read it a few months ago.
Yeah.
Alex.
Michaelides.
Yeah, I think Alex Michaelides, that's right. But also similarly, this is her second book.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Now I can go back and read her first book.
Yeah, I want to.
Well, I'll pass it to you when I'm done.
Okay.
So these are not books I've read, but they are my suggestions. If you liked this, then you might
Okay.
like these. The Song of Achilles is Madeline Miller's first book, extremely popular, and it is the story of Achilles, the best of all the Greeks, and his journey.
Cool.
It's a love story.
Nice.
These are three that I came across. I think this is a genre, modernizing
Modern
Greek.
Yeah.
I like it.
Wake Siren by Nina. Oh, Wake Siren, Ovid Resung, Nina McLaughlin. And this is a story of, I think it's it's a Medusa story,
Oh,
I think.
Okay.
I don't know.
I like
it
it.
looks good. Look at this cool cover art.
That's
you know?
gorgeous
It's pretty
art.
good.
You know, if I had a tattoo, that might be it.
It's
Maybe,
pretty cool.
if I had a tattoo.
It has a griffin. Yeah, it's very cool.
Yeah.
1,000 Ships. From Trojan women whose fates now lie in the hands of the Greeks, the Amazon
Trojan
princess.
women.
who fought Achilles on their behalf, from Penelope waiting for the return of Odysseus to the three goddesses whose feud started it all. These are the stories of the women whose lives, loves, and rivalries are indelibly imprinted on history's most infamous war.
Sounds interesting.
Okay. Shit Cassandra saw. Cassandra may have seen the future, but it doesn't mean she's resigned to telling the Trojans everything she knows.
That is an incredible cover.
I mean, they all have really cool covers in their own right. Shit Cassandra Saw by Gwen E. Kirby, 1,000 Ships by Natalie Haynes, and then Wake Siren, Ovid Resung, Nina McLaughlin.
Cool. I think that last one, I think that's going to be the first one. I just love that title.
Shit Cassandra Saw.
Yeah, I mean,
that. Well, yeah.
Well, let's go fast mode through what else we read this month, because we're nearing the 2-hour mark here.
Oh, wow. Okay. It was a book worth 2 hours of
yes. Oh, no, I'm not saying it wasn't, but...
Go ahead, Karen.
Okay. So I decided to reread a couple of books because it's a modern urban retelling of Alice in Wonderland, and called the first two books are called A Blade So Black, and the second one's A Dream So Dark by L.L. McKinley. And the reason is because the third book in the trilogy is coming out in September, A Crown So Cursed.
Ooh.
And it's really, really good. It's
Alice in Wonderland.
It's kind of interdimensional. Now, a little bit of horror, a little bit of fantasy, definitely some steamy romance. But yeah. So
what is it called?
The third one is called A Crown So Cursed, but it is the nightmare verse with a hyphen between.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, like, these poems that they speak out are actually like spells.
Ooh.
So
cool.
So, and Alice is this really awesome gal with a fro, and she's really badass, and she's trying to save the world from these nightmares while her mom, right after her father dies. Aww. So that's what kind of propels her into it. So she's trying to also, and her mom is just like, it's all she has. And so anyway, so it's really, really good. So I was rereading it, and it's really fantastic. And then I have some books that I am going to be reading.
That doesn't count.
Well, she had a recommendation, so
it's if you like this, then you might like
okay,
that.
well, then I'll hold off on
you
that.
You save that till you read it, and then you can recommend it next time when you can check it off your list.
I'm getting into skincare, and these are just a couple of books on how to make my own skincare masks.
Oh, that
sounds cool. I am reading a cheesy romance series.
Yay.
It's by Meg Cabot, and it's the Little Bridge series, whatever. Little Bridge Island, that's what it is. And the one I'm reading now is the first, which I realized was a trilogy when I went to pick a book, and I had picked the third one in a trilogy, and I was like, well, I better go back and start with the first one.
Mm-hmm.
It's called No Judgments by Meg Cabot, and it's fine.
She's pretty prolific, isn't she? Like, I feel like
think
I see
so.
her.
I feel like I've seen her name.
Yeah.
It's not the best novel I've ever read, and the author, or the narrator of the audiobook is not the best narrator I've ever listened to, but I've been enjoying it. It's cute, and I know what's going to happen, but,
Nothing's as bad as that tragic thing that I made us read before.
Oh, yeah.
A
very prolific romance
Oh,
novelist.
yeah.
Extremely prolific
I
romance
wiped it
novelist.
from my memory.
Yeah, that's how bad it was.
I mean, it comes back up every once in a while when I have, like, somebody
comes
older...
up like you're regurgitating.
Yeah, well, when I have, like, an older person wwho's been in the military, and a woman who's been in the military, like, I'm pretty sure that I came across the death certificate of someone who could have been in that book. And I'm pretty sure she was way more effing awesome.
You probably.
Yeah,
just
probably.
from some other things I learned about her. So every once in a while, it does come to thought, but I mostly no.
Yeah. We haven't spoken same, but if you follow us, you know what book we're talking about.
Yeah, you can go back.
I don't want it to ruin it for anybody that does enjoy it.
Oh, yeah.
We did not enjoy it.
No.
I have a feeling it's probably not even her best work,
No.
though, too. Like, it just didn't stand well as
No,
a novel,
it wasn't.
and I'll stand by that.
Yeah.
I've still been pursuing my quest to read all the Bronte novels. So I finished Jane Eyre. I think I was in progress on that when we were last recording. I finished Agnes Grey, and Wuthering Heights, which Wuthering Heights is so
One of my favorites.
it's different
dark.
than the movies.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah.
Like, they're really heinous human beings.
Yes. I almost liken it to an early horror.
Yeah,
genre.
it's definitely gothic. Yeah.
Very.
And now I'm on The Tenet of Wildfell Hall, which is interesting too. It's
What's
long.
that last one called?
The Tenet of Wildfell Hall. It's Anne Bronte's second novel. And then I think there's like 3 more Charlotte Bronte novels that were published. I think there's a total of 7 novels in their collection. So I'm about halfway through. It's
Cool.
interesting. It's good. I like it. I'm glad I'm doing it.
Nice. All right.
Yeah. Karin.
What are we reading, Karin?
We are reading The Vanishing Half, a novel by Britt Bennet, and this is her second book. Her first book was called The Mothers, and that first book came out in 2020, and this is one for 2022.
Wow.
Here's a little snippet about it. Twins, inseparable as children, ultimately choose to live in 2 very different worlds, one black and one white. The Vignes sisters will always be identical, but after growing up together in a small southern black community and running away at age 16, it's not just the shape of their daily lives that is different as adults. It's everything: their families, their communities, their racial identities. Many years later, one sister lives with her black daughter in the same southern town that she once tried to escape. The other secretly passes for white, and her white husband knows nothing of her past. Still, although separated by so many miles and just as many lies, the fates of the twins remain intertwined. What will happen to the next generation when their own daughter's storylines intersect? Weaving together multiple strands and generations, The Vanishing Half is at once a riveting family story and a brilliant exploration of the American history of passing. Looking well beyond issues of race, it considers the lasting influence of the past as it shapes a person's decisions, desires, and expectations. And it's one quote was, "It's one of the most put-downable reads of the year."
Mm-hmm.
Sweet.
To which my youngest said, "Oh, it's better than Old Yeller."
Wow.
Sorry.
And it took me 10 minutes to figure out what she meant.
Unputdownable. As opposed to a rabies dog.
Sorry, I just had to share that. Anyway, it was one of the New York Times
let that
10
child
best
know.
books of the year.
Please
So,
let your child
Who's
know.
the author?
Hilarious.
the author is Britt Bennet.
Nice. Okay, cool.
So,
Also a beautiful cover.
it is beautiful.
Cover artists are real talents.
Mhm.
I have had the privilege of knowing
It
one
was a
as
splash
friend.
of colors, and until this very, very moment, I just saw that it is this art of 2 sisters' faces kind of overlapping and melding.
Mm-hmm.
I did not see that till just now.
I don't think I did either.
You see it now?
Yeah, before it just looked very abstract.
Very abstract, but now you
so
see.
artful.
Yeah.
Okie dokie. Well, we'll see you in July for that one. And in the meantime, if you have any book recommendations, or if you want to tell us about something that you're reading, or if you have comments or whatever about this episode, please tell us in an email or comment or whatever you want. And we'll have a regular podcast episode coming out first week in July. So you'll see us then for that. And new classes for the studio are going to be coming out in the first week of July as well, if you're listening to this when it is coming out in mid-June. So we will see you in a couple weeks.
Woohoo!
Yay!
Bye, everyone.
Thanks for joining.
Strings Unraveled is a production of Strings and Things Studio, with Anne Lekravin Cazzoli, Kaity Von Rader-Fraker, and Karin Wilmoth. Recorded and edited by Kaity Von Rader-Fraker. Find us online at stringsandthingsstudio.com or on Facebook or Instagram at Strings and Things Studio. You can email us at stringsandthingsinfo@gmail.com.